Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Gonçalves, and today we have a special guest and a friend, Tim Southwell. So, welcome, Tim.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, doing well.
So, let me tell you guys a little bit about Tim. So, Tim is an evidential medium and psychic based in Ontario. He offers evidential psychic and mediumship readings online. He is a regular guest medium on the Sunday Gathering hosted with Sandra Champlain. He's also a tutor in training for Dykes and Kerry McLeod, who are international mediums. So, welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So here's a question I have for you that I find there's a lot of confusion. So you call yourself an evidential medium, and people sometimes get confused with that title. So can you explain to our listeners, what does that mean?
Yeah, it seems like every mediums tends to choose their own kind of title, something that's comfortable with them, and there's a lot of overlap, I would say, and that's where the confusion comes from. For me, I put down evidential medium and psychic because the first thing that comes through as I'm doing a reading is evidence. Like that's essential. If it's a psychic reading and it's soul to soul, and you're talking with the person in front of you, and you're bringing forth bits of information, reminding them of who they are, personality traits, it really helps the sitter, the person sitting there, to feel comfortable knowing that, okay, he's tapping into stuff here that he wouldn't know. And it tends to be, and it should be actually, stuff that you can't look up on Facebook or, that's so available now that really you need to go in there with strong evidence about personality, stuff that you wouldn't know. So if that's a psychic reading and mediumship reading, if you're bringing through a spirit person, then you want to make sure that before you go to like a message or what they're here to talk about today, you really want to build up that rapport that you have that person there. And again, with information that I wouldn't know ahead of time. I think that's really important because we've gone through years in which people will say they've got somebody, not
Yeah.
give any kind of proof about that, and then give all sorts of things that how do you know that's actually just not made up, or like we can trust that the media might think that's true even, but
Yeah.
it, there's lots of room for fraud in a sense. So to avoid that whole thing, evidence is what I find is really important before you get to the other stuff that's almost direct information.
That is good. So, because you said soul to soul reading, so can you explain what does that mean?
Sure, that's what happens in a psychic reading. So in
Yeah.
a psychic reading, what's happening is my soul is picking up the information from the soul of the person coming in to see me. So that's a real life person who is online for me. And what it is they would often have a question or they're wondering what's going on. So in a psychic reading, it's sort of my responsibility to discover what their need is. And I do that just by going by the feeling, what comes into my in a sense, clairvoyant could be a thing. So that means what you see mentally, you don't actually see it, or I don't at least, right there in front of me, but in my mind's eye is what happens there. And so that soul to soul is there. They may come in, they have something going on, they may have an issue, and we all lead the busy lives. And sometimes we don't necessarily see what's happening objectively because we're so intertwined with it. So
Yes.
instead, that communication, yeah, is with their soul, the wiser part of them, the thing that's beyond just who they are as a human being. And that's what would be picked up and brought forward. Lots of times it's a reminder of who they are, where they come from. Sometimes it's memories, and that really helps to get the focus back to the sitter and be a little bit, allow them to be more objective about what's going on.
Yeah. I find too with the psychic readings, which is the soul to soul readings, uh, when people book those readings, it's also a confirmation for them of where they're going within their lives and
Yeah.
the decisions that they're making. Because I know for myself, because I love readings, I love mediumship readings, receiving them, and I love psychic readings, receiving them. And when I go for psychic readings because I have a need, I'm confused, I don't know what to do with my life. I always find it interesting. You go for a reading and you think you're going in with a specific objective, right? For a reading for me, and I can only speak for myself. And then the medium will go, or the psychic, and bring up something completely different that needs healing. And I didn't realize that because I pushed it down so much. So, yes. And I think too, that's why training is so important
Yeah, absolutely.
for the medium and the psychic that are offering the readings so they can be ethical to help the people that are coming to them.
Right. Yeah. It's a constant growth and process, I feel. It should be, and it should be. Just like as we get older, more mature, we build, we learn. We don't stop at being 5 years old and that's it. We may have our inner child that throws
Yeah.
tantrums and that we show the world, but really we actually progress. And so it makes sense that even if someone feels they are naturally born with that, and in a sense, we all have that to a degree, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really just want to leave it there. Even if it's really powerful and really strong for some people, just naturally, you wouldn't want to be stagnant and just kind of sit there. So training can work for everybody, I feel. And it's really important because there's more. There's what to do in certain situations. Suppose there's something coming through that's kind of confusing for the reader, then you sort of learn techniques. And that to me is really valuable because it allows you to go in deeper and you tend to get more specific information, which means more to the sitter.
That is so true. So you are with Kerry and Phil, who
Yeah.
I absolutely love, and I'm with them also. And I mentioned in the intro, you are a tutor in training. So what's that like from where you started to where you are right now within your mediumship?
Yeah, that's really kind of cool. And the whole journey is about things just kind of opening up bit by bit as I guess the spirit world, along with you are willing to have happen. I have a background in teaching, so that it's interesting. Also, there's a whole sideline there where I feel everything that you experience, you do end up using in your life later on. So there were times in which I thought, why is this happening? Why is this going on? Why am I
Yeah.
interested in this kind of topic for a short time even? And then lo and behold, years later, it comes back and it's valuable. So teaching is one of them because that lasted for quite a while. But teaching in this way is quite different too. And it is just started. And in a sense, with Phil and Kerry being busy and they do travel the world and they do courses live and in person all over the place, some of the people would like to have practice online as traditionally the classes go. And
Yes.
I'm not doing this on my own. It's Shirley and myself are looking after those classes, and we're doing breakout rooms, we're doing practices. It's a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
it's different because for those classes, you do use a lot of your energy. You do use a lot of your power when you're in those classes and you're either practicing or doing the demonstration or whatever it might be. I am finding that I'm using about as much power as doing that. And I've taken those classes as well, so I'm familiar with how it feels to be in them and what may help me personally. And so I kind of can bring that to the table, the teaching background. And it's sort of opening up other things so that it's almost in a way, what I'm finding is it's sort of like a psychic reading as something's going on. And as someone's working through maybe evidence that they're bringing forward themselves, you can kind of lean into it, get a picture of what's going on, what's happening, almost in a way tap into it to a degree. You don't want to do it full-heartedly because you can alter things, I feel like you might
Yeah.
influence them indirectly. And again, I'm a bit of a fledgling in that, so I'm not sure how far to go into it or how far not to. But to observe what's going on and to see that, and what was really satisfying is recognizing things that I've gone through and being able to bring forward some stuff that I found helpful for me and seeing that that might hit home for someone, create an aha moment, or at least even be just appreciated that, oh, okay, this might be where they are. That's
Yeah.
really a rewarding part of it for sure. It's fun. It is fun.
I will say, because I've been in your classes with you and Shirley, and you're both amazing.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you are both so well respected by all the students because you've been where we've been. You've had the experiences. And Phil and Kerry are just, they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
just
absolutely.
absolutely amazing teachers and helping us grow and step into the mediums we're supposed to be. So I just want to say thank you to you and Shirley Ann for doing an amazing job each week in the circles because they're so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. And it's fun to be a part of as a student, but a part of to observe and kind of direct as well. Like it's there's a little bit of teaching, I feel, because most people are well aware what's going on, but sometimes it's a bit confusing or the penny hasn't quite dropped yet. And it's easy kind of to sometimes see that. But
Yeah.
I'm learning just along the way too. So like when I'm observing those sessions, I learn a whole lot, and that's valuable. Like that's why, and you mentioned before about lessons and teaching is really important to watch other mediums work all the way through because you will get an idea as to how they solve a situation, how they work with it, how it goes deeper, and you learn. And to think that you have stopped learning or that you no longer need to learn, I think would be really cutting yourself short for any medium out there.
Oh, absolutely. I learn every single day. One of my favorite things to do is watch other mediums. I love watching other mediums. I love that moment when the medium and the person receiving the reading has that moment of, oh, you have my person.
Mm.
And you could feel that love or the tears, and like we're all caught up on it. And that's my favorite part of mediumship is
Yeah.
that moment when the penny drops for the person receiving the reading going, oh my goodness, it's real. Their soul does live on. That is
Yeah.
one of my favorite parts. And I go watch mediums all the time. So for those that are listening and you're thinking about developing your mediumship or you are a developing medium, go and watch other medium styles. And because you learn so much from the way they work, you learn so much from the way the audience reacts to them too, and how
Yeah.
they break down the evidence. And yeah, I love doing that. And then you're also on Sandra Champlain, the Sunday gathering with
Right.
Shirley Ann. So how does that feel? I did it once. I wasn't a medium. I just did the what?
Address. Get the address because I watched it. Yeah, and that was great. Yeah.
Yes, I did the address. I was so nervous. So how do you control your nerves doing that?
I'm not entirely sure actually, because it's still not nerve wracking because it's fun, it's exciting. I think if you survive it once, then you realize, okay, so I won't, die a thousand deaths here. And they started me the same way too, and that was with the address. So I had the address, got really worked up for it, and then just I really prepared, maybe even over prepared myself. But it was fine. And one of the goals for the address there too is to eventually work yourself down to just having a few points. You can still practice those, but then allow sort of spirit to move in and kind of direct how you're going to move from one thing to another. And that's something to get used to. There's a whole lot of trust you have to have for that to happen. So that's it's fun. I don't mind speaking in that
Yeah,
way, like publicly. And also when you're online, you don't see the hundred and some odd people that are there. You just see that little green light and
yeah.
and Sandra and whoever might be there with you. And there's times where I've done it just by myself and Sandra, and there's times to share it as well. Sharing is a little bit easier because then you have a chance to kind of take a breather in between. There's a prayer as well. Mediumship there is really interesting, and that's purely demonstration style because you don't see an audience, you don't see anyone at all. I find that's helpful because then once the information starts coming through, you kind of feel like I can really trust this because I'm not being persuaded by a look or a direction or anything at all. There's nothing there to go by. And for some, that would be really scary. And you do kind of have to deal with that part and look at that yourself. But then once again, you do it and you've practiced it and it's everything you've worked for, and you try it out, it works, so you know you didn't die 1,000 deaths again. So so then you can kind of relax a little bit next time through. And it's the same procedures. And that formal training that Phil and Kerry offer is ideal, because if you get a little stuck or a little nervous, or you feel blocked, or you feel like nothing's coming through, then you've got ways to work around that, to deal with that, and what you could do next. Um, and one of the favorite things is the yes, no, and I don't know. That's the only response that is expected from your sitter. That's great. And when you're first practicing and you get a no, it's like you're a snail that crawls back into the shell, because you think, oh my gosh, all those negative thoughts about yourself creep in because you haven't
Yeah.
got the right answer. And when you get a yes, of course, you're over the moon, because you're thinking, wow, I can do this. But the no is really great, because then it allows you to go, okay, I saw that or felt that. I can kind of rework it. Oh, wait a second, this feels better. And you go by feeling a lot. And
Yeah.
then you can kind of restate the way it should have been. And yes, that makes sense. That allows you to get more detail, more information. And that's helpful with the evidential medium as well, because
Mhm.
there are other mediums who are out there, and we can see them on YouTube as well. And the expressions can be really general, like how many people have had a relative who was very happy in their life, or or
Yeah.
broad statements are made and it's not specific enough. And because in a way it's like a blind reading, you only see the
Yeah.
name and hear the person's voice on the gathering there. Um, you have to go with feeling into it. What does this really feel like? Who's here communicating? What are they trying to get across? Less distraction, which is helpful. I do like that part. So I could
Yeah.
really focus on them and that feeling you're in with the essence of the spirit person. So yes, you know people are watching, but you only really see about three. And there are three people you usually know. Either someone from class, and Sandra, you get to know
Yeah.
Sandra very well, and she's a
She's
lovely,
awesome.
yeah.
I love her.
She's and she's helping to direct the reading as well. Like she'll repeat the information or see
Yeah.
whose hand is up. That is a major load off of your mind, because you don't need to worry about that. You can just sit there and do the mediumship. But it's fun. And you're talking about reaction of people, when you can hear in the voice that there's an impact going on,
Yes.
that this, you're not searching for that. That's not what you have to get. That's not it at all. But because you're really focused anyway, but you can hear that it's having an effect. And that's, to me, what I go in with. If you talk about intention or whatever, is I hope that I make contact with someone that can be really helpful to the recipient, to whomever message is to go to. And that's allowing that communicator to speak. It's like a phone call. Imagine, and they say this in class, imagine you have like 5 minutes to make a phone call, and they're from the other side. You haven't heard from them for years, and you're really wanting to hear from them. It's really important to make that message heartfelt.
Yeah.
And evidence to me, I want to talk about that too. Evidence to me isn't about, they wore a certain kind of hat and they had a certain kind of shoe, and they had this and they had that specifically, and they had 5 rings on each finger. You might start with those things just to kind of note, because they're unique, and just to say that's who you've got, kind of verify that. But evidence goes much more than that. Evidence is about who they were as a person, bringing back memories. That's evidential, and memories that who would know except the person who's sitting there. It can be wonderful things like sledding as a child, but then you can describe the sled. You can talk about the tumble that happened, but then dad in spirit maybe picked her up and then held on to her until, and there's little bits of information that mean so much for them. And it's bringing back memories, bringing the loved one alive again, although they are alive. They're just
Yeah.
on the other side. But it's those kind of things where you feel there's an impact. And as we discover in class, Maria, that we don't always know as the reader what the impact is. We don't necessarily know what
True.
good evidence is. It's the recipient. It's how it's affected them, how it's kind of given them a breath of fresh air, inspired them in some way. Maybe they're struggling with something. And that's sometimes the message at the end from the spirit world is, I see you and I'm still here and I know what's going on. And to offer the words of support, sometimes in the same wording that they would have said when they were here on earth. And that really does affect the recipient. Those are wonderful moments when those happen.
And you actually brought my aunt through on the Sunday gathering.
Yeah.
And my family, for those that are listening and have been around me, just so you guys know, my mom is alive, but all my aunts come through as mom because she came through as mom. So then I have to think a little bit and be like, wait, everything sounds right. But my aunts were like moms growing up. So I always find that piece interesting within mediumship because sometimes I'll see the medium, like you were totally fine. But for other mediums, they'll look at me so confused, like, what do you mean? But I know I have a mom here, but you're saying your mom's alive. And I'm like, keep going, because you got my aunts and we were raised as a community. My mom and so there's six sisters, so six aunts, and we would get together every single Sunday. I was telling this to my mom the other day. We would get together every single Sunday with my aunts and uncles. So my uncles were like dads to me, my aunts were like moms to me, and all of my cousins felt like brothers and sisters because that's how tight our family was as we were growing up. And now because half of my aunts and uncles are now in spirit, and as they come through, I find it so interesting how they present themselves
Yeah.
because of that relationship I had with them growing up, because we were so close. At one point, we all lived across the street from each other. And in Portugal, we do live across the street from each other, except for one aunt who lives in the next town over. We're all within walking distance, like basically our backyards kind of all touch each other. But yeah, but that's how close my family came in, and you brought in my aunt. And I don't know, I love the way you brought her in because she was coming in with the dancing, and
Yeah, I
that's
remember
the
that
kind of
one too.
person. She was a happy aunt.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
it, yeah,
yes,
it's cool how she came in too, because like you never know. You have to be open. You really have to be open as to how they want to work and what it is they want to present. Because there's some points there where I was seeing dancing feet in my mind's eye, and then there would be like a feeling of emotion kind of wash over as the love, and that's where the mother feeling would come from, which is why
yeah,
training is so important. Because with training experience and practice, rather than going, okay, I've got mom here and actually be aunt, you would kind of go, I've got, oh, wait a second. You have an aunt who was like a mom for you. That would be the golden goose, so to speak, right? That would be
yes.
the goal, to go right to that source. And very few people can just automatically. You have to work at it. You have to practice it. And as your example too, with everyone living close together, think of the evidence that comes through, and I still wouldn't know who it is because it could be anyone from the family who's passed. And then the next piece, it would be again similar too. So that's great to work on and get experience being able to hone in on the one individual who's actually here,
Yeah.
or the time too where more than one appeared for yourself there.
And we were that dancing family because like I'm Portuguese and that's part of our culture. It's the folklore dancing, it's the waltz, it's a tango, it's all of that stuff. And I remember growing up, we would go to like even in Portugal, the towns would have festivals, like street parties.
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody's dancing. It's just part of the culture. You're always dancing. And I love how you brought my aunt in with the dancing. And I was like, yeah, we need more dancing in our lives to make us
Yeah.
just make us happy. More
And that,
dancing, more
yeah.
dancing.
And that's cool because that's a whole culture I wouldn't know about. And
Exactly.
that's another power of Zoom or any online readings is you get to experience other cultures, you get to learn about them. You need to include them as well. And our training and in classes, they cover like it's all the English speaking countries, but from Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, UK, Ireland, Scotland, all of those areas that those students represent, and Europe as well, those students who are speaking in their second language to take the class, what you learn, and it's really, really cool. And one that comes to mind is perspective of, say, world wars. A lot of
Yeah.
grandparents will come through, so they experienced a world war, but from their perspective of their country, and yet other wars that I may have no clue about, but they're bringing forth this information. It's you get to learn. If you have that curious mind, it's great because you're learning all the way through, and I get a lot of energy from that. It's really cool. I've also been lucky. I've been able to do demonstrations over in the UK. So, as part of the evidential sort of mediumship thing, there's the Arthur Findlay College and SNU, and they follow sort of certain formats and expectations in doing readings in that way. And Gordon Higginson is sort of the ideal person that we follow his style, his teachings that he learned from his mom as well. So we bring those through for accuracy and to create that good reading. And his church, I had the like it was an amazing opportunity. And I know you've had Laura on as well. She was there. And there's the student medium kind of group. We were able to do readings from his church. And that was an amazing experience. And that was through Phil and Kerry arranging that and another church as well. So it's weird being Canadian. It's weird to be in the UK and when introduced from Ontario, then you have a reaction like, whoa, and you don't realize that, your accent is really something different to them. But things that come forward as evidence, you just have to say what you're feeling and thinking because you can't understand. You just don't have that background under the history or, all the wording, even sometimes of some of the food that comes up because food's really important in a lot of readings, right? It
Yes.
helps to identify a culture, a country, and how many times, and I'm sure you've done this too, where you've had to describe what you're either seeing, and sometimes it even has a taste because you don't know the
Yeah.
proper name of it. And it's really that's a lot of fun too, because you're learning. And
Oh,
sometimes you get to taste
language.
it too.
Yeah, language is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I was in a reading, I was like, oh, and I have your dad, and he's bringing me to the backyard. And they're like, the backyard? I was like, yeah, the backyard. They're like, you mean the garden? I was like, what? I had like a moment in my brain because your brain's like, what? This what? Because like in Canada, gardens like in your front, right? In front of your
Yeah.
house, like
Yeah.
the garden's like a little thing, a couple of flowers or something. But I can't remember what country this meeting was, and I was doing a practice reading, and I was like, no, the backyard. And they just looked at me like, the back who? What does that word mean, Maria? And I'm like, oh, so you learn to break things down.
Yeah, or the back 40 is what I'm thinking when I hear that expression. That's the one I'm used to. Or one of my favorite ones too is the out when I was having a reading done for me in a practice, they had talked about the outhouse, which
Yeah.
in the UK is the outbuilding. When I was growing up, the outhouse was the washroom from the house
Yeah.
because the house, yeah, so it had two totally different meanings. But
I didn't know
that's
that. See,
yeah,
I learned a new word.
there you go. Yeah. So yeah, so when it first comes across, you wonder, what are you talking about? They parked the car in the outhouse. No, I don't think it would fit.
Yeah, language is super important. So as a medium and you're learning, pay attention to how your recipient is receiving the information. If they look confused, go
Yeah.
back and clarify. And if you're on Zoom and you can't see them, their voice, right? Like you can hear it in people's voices. They're like, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you say. So be
Yeah.
okay with breaking things down. Because I
Yeah.
find people get
Absolutely.
scared of breaking things down.
And the training, if that's a lot, that's a huge part of training. And some people even criticize that. They're saying you're in the training, you're becoming too trained, too rigid. And that's not the case at all. Instead, what I find is they're trying to either teach you a method before you get bad habits or undo bad habits. Because if I were to do a whole stream of about five things in one shot, and then all you really should be saying is yes or no, how can you say unless they're all yes or all no? I
Yeah.
said things and that's going to be really confusing. And it usually means I'm not clear of as to what I'm getting because I'm kind of covering it with all sorts of other words and just, making a big word salad out of the whole thing. So instead
Yeah.
you go in there and you make this simple statement and direct statement and then direct statement and you get the response each time. And that brings the recipient, the person that came to see you in with it as well. They're involved and then they get to be feeling energized with that reading also.
Yeah. I love that. I am curious, growing up for yourself, were you always a medium? Like, did you see spirit when you were little or no?
That, yeah, wouldn't that be fun if the answer was yes, yes, even as a toddler. But that's not, I don't think that was the case for me. And I have to say, I don't think, because really I didn't go into a formal kind of practicing, or even, is this really what I is perceiving? Like, what's going on here? This intuition, as I've kind of learned to think about it, was there all the way along. Like I love to be out in nature. And it's that commune with nature sort of thing. So just kind of feel at home. You could almost sense what animals or birds and stuff around you was going on. When I was a kid, when I was a kid, I was pretty much on my own, living out in the country. So like there wasn't a city that I was in. So entertaining myself out in outdoors and things like that. So I remember having a favorite game of mine where I would be in the lilac bushes and I would pretend that that was like a bank, and people would be coming in to drop off some money and take some. I don't know why a bank. It was had nothing to do with a career choice at all, but it was just bizarre. And I would know them. Oh, Mr. So and so and Miss so and so would be coming in and doing that sort of thing. So I always thought that was just a kid having fun. But
Yeah.
going back and kind of thinking, in that mind back then, it was actually an interaction. So is there something there that was kind of going on? And like I'm talking about pre-kindergarten. So this is what, 5, 6 years old
Wow.
in that kind of time. And just enjoying being outdoors. So I didn't really have that sense that I could read minds or pick up things or emotions so much until I started going to school. And then people who develop in this area tend to be kind of sensitive to others' emotions and their own. And I, looking back again, because I just assumed everyone was like that, you could feel how people were feeling as you were talking to them. And I think we all do that definitely to a level, but there's times in which, you're really, there are, you could understand how they were feeling when you really shouldn't. They might have been sitting beside you in class, and you're kind of all of a sudden get the impulse to look over, and you can see they're kind of upset about something. And you think, why did I have that impulse to look over and pick up? Um, all of those bits and pieces I take from kind of the past. And that's sort of what I trained as now. Like in the last, for me, it's been with Phil and Kerry, 4 years going on to 5, and all online stuff. And that's when I really got to it. Prior to that, I had interest, and I did go visit Lilydale, and I read bits and pieces and kind of had seen psychics, not gone in to see a psychic, but seen them on TV and things like that. So it was always an interest. It was always there in the background. But as to actually pursuing it, that really came with Phil and Kerry in the last 5 years, and a little bit before that at Lilydale. Um, and that's the Lilydale has in the States is the spiritualist community. And that's spiritualism is more the religion form of that. So there is mediumship involved because you're bringing through proof of life after death.
Mhm.
Um, so that fits hand in hand with it. They are separate things, but mediums do presentations at Lilydale and for spiritualist churches. So that felt very comfortable. It felt at home in a way, to to go there. And it took a couple, this is kind of funny, it took a couple of times to do that because it would be driving across the border, and I thought, what if anyone realizes this is what I'm doing? And so there's like one year where it was a drive-by and just to figure out where it was, and then that was it. I didn't go on the property because that would have been committing too much
Oh
of,
no.
of my belief. And then the next summer, going down again and actually driving in and around, and then deciding, and then I left and decided, okay, that's enough. That's enough. I can't
You
do
didn't
any
go
more at the
in?
moment. I
Oh my
didn't go
goodness.
in anything. And then I did turn around though and say to myself, this is stupid. Why am I being so stupid about this?
Yeah.
So I went back in again and went to the library and kind of walked around the property. And it's the walking around the property where you actually feel what it's like to have that under your feet, where you kind of go, yeah, there's something here. There's something about this. And there's kind of a bit of a draw to pursue it even more. And that was
Yeah.
just a few years before COVID. And then it was in the COVID years where things went online that I did the formal training with Phil and Kerry.
Wow. I've gone to Lilydale once. I don't drive in the US, so make my friend drive. So it's like, you have to drive. So we went for the day. Uh, it was so much fun. But the library, because they have the stuff from the
Yeah,
Fox sisters. Then they have the healing chapel.
yeah.
That was beautiful because I think we went last summer. Yeah, if it wasn't last summer, it was 2 summers ago. I can't remember. It was a fun day trip. We went for the day. So it was fun. And then we got to meet Lisa Williams. You
Yeah.
know, Lisa?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
take a course with
Hey,
her. That was one of the ones when I was down there. Yeah.
yeah, we got lost. We were going to, we signed up for an evening workshop and we didn't know where we were going. And there's this woman walking her dog. I can't remember if she had two dogs or one dog. And I look at my friend, I'm like, oh my God, that voice. But I saw the dog. So I went to pet the dog. And then I look up because I heard her voice. I'm like, are you Lisa Williams? And she's like, yeah. She's so sweet. I was
Yeah.
like, yes. It was worth the trip just to meet her, let me tell
Yeah.
you. And it was quite by accident because she was out walking her dog and we were lost. We didn't know where we were going. So that was fun.
Yeah.
So you talked about mediumship as a child, but how was it like for you right now? And just like even growing up, did you see, hear, feel? Has that changed?
That's a really good question. Because there's a kind of knowing, which I didn't realize again at the time, because you're just a kid living your life. And because I was out in the country, there were 45-minute school bus rides to school and back. So that's where I sort of became in my own little world. Um, and I remember being drawn looking outside, but I would have conversations almost. And it might sound kind of a little nutty, but it's conversations in which I would pose questions and even kind of say, well, that tree looks really interesting, or I wonder why that's like that, or that's going on. And I would feel, or it'd almost be like a response. Not that I could hear a response, but it's almost like in my head, I would get the answer that I was, and I never pushed it. And I kind of wish I had to see how exact they could be with things I wouldn't necessarily know. But it was just long rides on the bus and just making observations and kind of wondering about stuff and then feeling that come in. So that's almost the claircognizance, like a knowing. But I also did feel it was coming from outside of me. So it was like a clairaudient sort of way without hearing from my ears, but expressions and phrases would come in that way. Again, at the time, I didn't think that was too unusual. And as a kid, being outdoors and walking through the woods, and I didn't verbalize stuff out loud because that would have been perceived as kind of unusual. But I would just think, I wonder about this, or even then I started to test it a bit and just say, and I do that even today for driving. I'll kind of pose a question. I wonder which is the best way to get there, or which is going to be the fastest route. Now, what we'll visualize is a corner or something that kind of tells me, okay, go that way. And I just trust that.
Yeah.
A person could believe or not believe that, but I do trust that. And you don't know the accidents you avoided, but
Yes.
I do find I get there, in time. And sometimes if I'm late, all of a sudden I've arrived on time because of the route that, popped into my head. Those popping into my heads or knowing, wait a second, I'm going to get a phone call from some, and then the phone rings. Those started happening more and more the more I
Oh, wow.
acknowledged, not just like some people believe that, yeah, if you look at it, that's when you notice it. Not so much because I noticed it, but then the more I became aware of it, it happened more frequently. And where I am in my development now, um, starting out, I would be thinking, okay, this is clairvoyant. I'm seeing this in my mind. This is clairaudient. I'm hearing this in my mind. And then feeling it clairsentient. So I would go through I'd be thinking as I'm doing a reading, this is what's happening. And then eventually I thought, you know what, I got to let that go because that's slowing me down. It's like kind of taking a step and going, well, I'm wearing a rubber boot. Oh, I'm wearing a golf shoe. Oh, I'm wearing, like, who cares what you're wearing? It's happening. You're moving. So just concentrate on the reading, and I think that's kind of helped in where my development is to become more claircognizant because I'm no longer concerned which way it's coming in. I'm just being open, allowing that to come in. And then that becomes a knowing. there's a big step, and I'm sure you've had to go through this too, but it was definitely a big step for me because you hear people say, well, I know this and I know this about the spirit person. I know that.
Yeah.
And I always thought, how can I can't say that because I don't know it. I
Mhm.
feel that might be true. I think that might be true. I've got to get out of my head though. And eventually comes to the point where um I know he had three dogs. You just know they had
Yeah.
like you have that and it lands on you and you can't not say it. That's a powerful thing. And that's been maybe 3 years in the making of being in
Yes.
that place. And just to imagine where it may go from there, that's what I love about this. It's not always
Yeah.
easy. You know that
No.
too. We
Yeah.
in our development, we have the highs and the lows, right? Where things are going really well and new things are opening up and we've tried something new and it's like we're being shown that this would work. And then we have the slumps where for me, um, when I first started, clairvoyance was really powerful. So I could see my mind's eye stuff and then kind of work around it. If it was a scene, you could move in that scene.
Mhm.
If it's an object, you could see the different sides of it. And then when I started the formal training, boom, that disappeared. And then I thought, I think I've messed something up. I think I've just now spoiled it because something that was working now is completely gone later. And it took a year for me to figure out what was going on is it's almost like they were my spirit team on the other side were working to kind of close those shutters because what wasn't happening is the feeling as much. I wasn't using my emotions, my sensitivity, and you
Yeah.
can see, you just feel like this is happening. That was brand new to me. And I went 6 months with just that and not understanding it and feeling like I had messed it up. I was awful. All those self-doubts really happen. And then they'll pop open the clairvoyance again just for a little bit. And you go, wait, it's not gone. It's actually there. And then the penny drops. Wow, what's happening now, what I can see and feel is so much further along than it was 6 months ago. And it was because of that. That's a very
Yeah.
long-winded, but we
It's true.
all go through those moments of we feel like it's being taken away. We can no longer feel or hear anything because we have to raise our power to go further out and pick up stuff from
Yeah.
them. And that makes us better as a reader.
It does. And for those that are listening or watching this, if your mediumship is changing, it's okay. It didn't disappear. You're not being punished because I've heard people say that to me. Oh, I'm being punished because I'm focusing on something else or some. No, it has nothing to do with that. Your spirit team is growing and evolving with you. And I feel like they're raising you up, but you just don't know it and you got to trust the process. Because I know for myself in the beginning of the year, fear, even last year, like at the end of the year, spirit started getting fainter and fainter and fainter, like energetically.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of my readings, previous, and maybe some of you listening may be able to relate, spirit would be there and be like, yeah, they've been here with me like for 2 hours. They've been waiting for this reading for 2 hours. And now it's like you're doing your paid readings in person or online. And you're like, I got nobody. Person comes on screen. And it's not until I say I'm shifting my awareness over to the spirit world and then boom, spirit shows up. But until I talk, I got nobody. So then it becomes that whole trust, because I know they're gonna show up,
Yeah.
but it's almost like they've taken the training wheels off and it's like, you got this, Maria. We'll show up at that very second you open your mouth to say, I have. I know I have your mom here. Until then, I got nothing.
Yeah.
So if that's happening to any of the people listening and your mediumship feels like it's getting fainter, it's just spirits stepping back. They don't need to use so much energy with us. That
Yeah.
was a hard lesson to learn because I was like, oh, where do they go? And you miss it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I miss having them here. Like in the morning when I wake up, where did they go?
And you
And
feel like
or
you're
an hour.
broken.
Yes. It's like your little blanket. My blanket, where did my blanket go? Why can't I feel them yet? And now it's like, it's not until I start to say those words. It's almost like that light switch with the spirit world. And they're like, okay, she's ready. We're on. And let's power up and use energy. Yes.
And it is kind of cool because the minute you get used to something is the minute it changes again. Because it's like they don't want you to get too attached to a certain thing, because then what happens if that thing doesn't happen? Like sometimes I like to light a candle, I just like to have that. But if I were to start feeling I have to light a candle in order for this to work, and then all of a sudden I can't run out of wax or the lighter doesn't work, then
Yeah.
I'm going to go in with the mindset, and mindset's really important, that, you know, this is not going to work because I didn't get to have the candle going, and I have to have the candle. So they will likely kind of do something, you forget the candle and you still did a reading and it worked. So things will come up
Yeah.
that kind of make you think, yeah, don't get too attached to the way you're used to doing things or whatever. I'm glad that, and then again, Phil and Kerry's classes, I'm glad there was someone there ahead of time to say, this will eventually happen. So that even when you're in the midst of it and feeling kind of crummy about it, you have that little voice of saying, yeah, this will happen and you'll find your way out of it again. Still doesn't necessarily make it feel good, but
Yeah.
there's that little bit of hope that makes you realize, okay, I didn't do something wrong here. Because I think
Yeah.
that's the first thing we do is we go to ourselves and going, oh, I really messed it up somehow.
That is true. And I think it's all, well, I feel like it's also important to let people know that are listening. If you study with a mentor and it doesn't feel right anymore, it's okay to change.
Mm,
I've changed so many mentors.
yeah.
I'm with one person, I'm like, okay, I feel like I learned what I learned, and then I've gone to a different mentor. And I think we need to give ourselves permission to say, hey, this doesn't feel right anymore. Maybe been here 6 months, maybe been here 2 years. And it's just you growing in your soul, your spirit team, your soul is like, well, I need to change. There's lessons I need to learn with other people, or maybe you've done training. You're like, okay, you know what? I need to step back from training. Just trust it. Trust it as you go through this, because there is no step one, step two, and it's perfect. I find it's zigzag, you're
Mm,
going out, but it is zigzag, and you're kind of like, sometimes I have moments where I pull my hair and I'm like, why? Why is this happening to me?
yeah.
Or a course you're about to take, all of a sudden it falls apart, and you're like, why? And then later you find out, then spirit's like, oh, because I was supposed to go over here. And it's just like that big, great plan. So it's trusting and being okay with change, or at least for me, anyways. I find a lot of stuff has changed. I think it's also important when you're looking for mentors. For me, anyways, lineage is important to me. Like, it
Yeah.
really is. Like, who am I studying with? Because I find my mentors are like, they come from Paul Jacobs.
Yeah.
Because Bill
Yeah.
studied under
To,
Paul
yeah.
Jacobs, Andy Bing studied under Paul Jacobs. Like, because I love Paul Jacobs' style of teaching.
Yeah.
That works for me. So I find, like, yeah.
And
So
that
it's
lineage goes back to Gordon, right? Because he was a student of
exactly,
Higginson's. Yeah. And
yes,
it's interesting you say that, because I didn't necessarily go looking for that, but discovered that to be true, which was sort
yes,
of as you're starting to get the idea, yeah, this does make sense. And it was Phil who studied under Paul as well.
yes, yes.
And then, yeah, that was great. I discovered them. There's a spiritualist church on the other side of Toronto for me, closer to where you are. And at one point, and it was again COVID times, and I was just thinking, you know what? I really feel that I'm going to put education now to the side, and I'm going to serve my soul in a sense. That
Yeah,
sounds very like religious or whatever, but I felt like, you know what? I want something a little bit more out of this life, and I feel like there's a pull somewhere. So I did I was familiar with that church, and they had canceled some stuff because of COVID going on. And I looked at their website and I saw both Phil and Kerry, and I thought, this is amazing that because they're
yeah,
married, you get two mediums for the price of one in a
yes,
sense. So I thought, why not go to a mentoring system? It seems like they answer questions, and that's what I
yeah,
had, a whole lot of questions. And one of the big ones, even at that point, was, am I making this all up? Like, is
yeah,
this real or not real? And am I fooling myself over this? And I did look into the background of what was going on there, because, you want to be careful, and you should be careful, and have a little bit of trust at least to go in.
yeah,
Had that mentoring session with them, where they had me do a little bit of exercises and stuff like that. And I kind of surprised myself based on how they led me through. And then they said, yeah, this is what this was about. You got these things. And they said, yeah, now it's up to you. Everyone is free will. That may be the answer you're after, and mission accomplished. Or if you're looking for the next step, here are some possibilities.
Yeah.
And they were the right kind of tutors for me. I have to acknowledge that. I might not express this the right way, but if someone's kind of all over you or petting you too much along the back and saying, okay, that was great, and this is amazing, and this is, or if they're the opposite of that, just too distant, like you're not even aware that they're even teaching the course,
Yeah.
then either of those do not work for me. I
Yeah.
don't need tough love. It's not that, but I also don't need coddling. So I'm somewhere in the middle, and that's still a wide range. And I found that that really worked. I could ask questions when I needed that support. I could reach out, but it's not going to be thrown on my doorstep at me when I don't want it.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. And I had to find a lot of my own answers because each
Yeah.
person's mediumship is unique and different, and we have to find it out for ourselves. Some people have struggled with that and then go off and do something else.
Yeah.
It's kind of what your calling is and where it runs. I never thought I would have been demonstrating, frankly. I was thinking I would just do one-to-one readings and psychic and mediumship, not even sure exactly what the definition is between the two of them, um,
Yeah.
or the idea that we really practice the psychic and a piece of psychic is mediumship. So that communication direct, if we make that communication to the spirit world, that's when it becomes mediumship. And some choose to do that, some can't do that. It doesn't fit in whatever is going on in their lives. And then there's a whole other realm of psychic stuff that people can do.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. And like psychic detective, I find that fascinating. I'm not drawn to that though, but I find it fascinating and believe that people can really do that and help in that way. That's such a big help for them. Pet psychics. I've talked to one or two. I can't do that. I communicate well with my own, but I don't feel that that's where my strengths or even interests sort of lie. But others have done that, and others have done such a powerful reading of my dogs that,
Yeah.
how could they possibly know this? And it's not general stuff like they like to go out and play in the garden or yard or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not general. It is specific things, including some ailments or the way they react in a certain situation, which is kind of different
Yeah.
and unique to me. So it's fascinating. The whole world of that. There's so much that's out there that we trust a bit. And I'm sure you're kind of like this too. There's a natural born skeptic in all of us, and it takes a fair bit before I'll kind of go, maybe that's possible. And then you find out more, and you find out more, and it becomes real. That's why evidential has been so important to me, is because I needed that evidence to prove to me that this is actually happening.
Wow. I know for myself, for pets, I would not call myself a pet medium, but I will say I have last year I did so many pet readings. And I would be like so mesmerized by myself and impressed because I'd be like, oh my goodness, I just did a reading and I brought a donkey through. Who has a pet as a donkey? But this person did, and their donkey came through, and I'd be like, wow. But I didn't specifically go out with the intention or study under a medium where it's just for pets, because my intention is always when I do mediumship readings is for their healing. What is
Yeah.
it that they need for their highest healing for their soul? And to get out of the way. But I noticed last year I had so many pets come through with so much detail.
Wow.
But the donkey, I've had parrots, parakeets, dogs, and I could describe them like, personalities, everything. And I noticed this year with spirit, it's like my mediumship in the pet department is shifting, and I'm not getting that detail that I used to get with pets, still bringing in through their pets or personalities, but these other little tiny details that I was used to getting. But
Right.
then I get other stuff. So I'm just trusting spirit as it's shifting and evolving. But I will say last year was my biggest year for pets, and pets because I have one lady I did a reading for, and everybody, I was at a psychic fair, everybody's like, my loved one, my loved one, my loved one. As soon as she sat down, her dog was there. I was like, I have your dog
Mm.
here. And she had just put her dog down, I think the day before, and her dog was there and all this. And and then after I think like her dad came forward to say he had the dog, but it
Nice.
was the dog, and the dog took up most of the reading with all that detail, but that's
Yeah.
what she needed.
Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. The
And
heal.
spirit uses us, right? For the people that, because I know too, when my dog has come through and I'll be like, oh, and that's, and I don't want to hear about anybody else in spirit that week. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's all about my dog this week. And
Yeah.
that just like feeds my soul when my pets come through.
And it's really important that it's validated, right? So, like, someone could say, I have your dog here. What are the odds someone has a dog? And then the reaction might be, oh, that's amazing. And then they could say anything else about that. But the way we're trained is that we'll be specific about stuff, and there's a
Yeah.
memory. A lot of times, memories will come through. I've really only had one really clear pet come through in which they went into detail about their health and one leg over the other leg and the color and just. But that was what was needed for that particular person coming in, and it's kind of funny, but yeah, normally I don't get that so much. And even in the training, there's usually a person attached to the pet because pets can't, in the belief, in the theory that which people can agree or disagree with, the pets can't necessarily have an active vocabulary for communicating. They can communicate feelings because they feel things, but
Yeah.
there often is a human that's coming through who's passed, who then is able to express and communicate and come up with the wording and stuff like that. That donkey
Yeah.
story, yeah,
My donkey.
that's pretty amazing. Yeah,
My pets talk. They got souls. They tell the stories. Sometimes the humans come through, sometimes they don't. But again, I never set the intention that I'm a pet medium, because I'm not. But my intention is bring whoever they need to hear from, their highest healing, whatever it is that they need.
yeah,
And then I get out of the way and I let spirit figure it out. But I will say the donkey was the coolest. I've had parrots come through that've been like, you clip my wings, and they weren't in a cage, and they could give me all the details.
yeah,
But last year, I don't know what it was. It was like the year of the pets. And they all came through. This
that's really,
year, not so much. So it's shifting. So being okay with my mediumship shifting because I'm not getting that many pets, I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's, I always do the, oh, that's so interesting. Do you
yeah,
do that where you reflect upon your mediumship and you're like,
yeah.
it's shifting? Where's spirit taking me?
Yeah, now I do. You know, the first time through, and there's something else you said there about getting out of your own way. That is such a big part of training too, because we bring so much of our own crap,
Yeah,
into things. And I'm feeling this way. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that person. And then you really have to be able to develop a way to clear that out so that you can just become that open vessel for that, impulse to come in from whatever source. But yeah, and even the missing. So when something was strong and then it's kind of taken away or backed off a bit and you kind of miss what's going on. It used to be, oh, what did I do wrong? What have I, but that's not it at all. It's now more like, oh, okay, I noticed that's going away. It's still there. They're not going to keep practicing the stuff that can happen because they've
yeah,
got, and I've got that, and we've got that communication going. So instead, let's move to something that could be developed. And that's the exciting part. There is time there where all of a sudden the mediumship, things were getting tougher to do and pick up. But then so I went in with that mindset. I thought, okay, then let's look. Something's going to change. Something's going to open up that's different, never happened
yes,
before. And boom, in the psychic side, that really affected. That was about expression and emotion, that period. So I just went, okay, I'll go with this and I'll do much more psychic practice and really work on that. And that's what was needed. And then I think that helped to hasten the return of the mediumship because I went, okay, I got this. I'm going to go in there with both feet and see what I can do. And then it kind of opened up again. That's where I felt, because sometimes you can feel spirit. and sometimes they feel really close. And that was a time in which it was almost like a glass wall. And I knew they were there and I could
Yeah.
kind of feel they're there, but there's like a barrier. I could almost see them, but something had changed there. Focused on the psychic, did all that work and experienced the newer stuff there. And that wall just kind of gradually sort of dissolved. And they were still a little further. I had to work to reach out to them a bit more. But
I I am curious because you were talking about the psychic and the knowing. So do you get psychic hits for yourself? Do you know things that are going to happen within your own life? Just curious.
not in a big way, I don't feel. What I tend to get more is inklings that something's up,
Oh,
or that
okay.
yeah, so that if I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's pick a car thing. So all of a sudden I'll just out of the blue will come the feeling of, or just car battery impression will be in my head and went, I, maybe I better look at that, because all of a sudden that just, and I that to me I feel is like someone from the spirit world is kind of helping me out, saying, you who knock on my head, you better
Yeah.
look at this before there's a problem. So little
Yeah.
psychic things like that, nothing really major. And honestly, I don't really try. I did go to England just in the spring here, and before that, I really felt like that was going to happen. Like it just when that was opportunity was mentioned, I kind of all got that feeling like this is going to happen. I don't know
Yeah.
how, but this is all going to fit together, and I didn't even know timing or expense or accommodation. Just had that feeling. The psychic feeling that is kind of weird is, and I verified it because I didn't want to just go by, I think this is happening, like kind of the new agey way of thinking. But all of a sudden I got the gut feeling, because that's where the clairsentience goes, that solar plexus, got this gut feeling somebody is not talking smack, but it was I'm in a conversation. Somebody's having a conversation that I'm involved in. And it used to happen when I was teaching. And that's how I verified it, because then I would go visit that person and say, hi, how you doing? Oh, we were just talking about you. We
Oh,
want you to
wow.
put it. So they weren't talking bad or anything. It's just the
Yeah.
name coming up. And that's progressed even more as it become more sensitive. I could kind of, and then also now get a picture of who that is, so that um, you know, people are people, and most people I know are really nice. So there's never a problem.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, oh, so and so, I think they're going to reach out to me, or there's something that they want to talk about with me, and I get who it is happening. And sometimes people check in on me. Some people who are in the class kind of do a little check-in, like they haven't heard from me, and I can kind of feel like, oh, you know what? I'm going to reach out to so and so. I haven't talked to them for a while, and do a little message. And they said, just thinking about you. And so
Oh,
I know that that works. I wouldn't have trusted that, but now I really do. That's kind of cool for the psychic side.
that is cool. So I have enjoyed our talk. And before we close, I just wanted to ask you, so for those that are beginning on their mediumship journey and they're kind of confused and they don't know what to do, where to go, uh, what would one thing you would suggest for them within their mediumship development?
If it's specifically mediumship, that's a tough question there, Maria. Um, I would have assumed they would have likely read some stuff about it or done a little bit of research online. And so they've got a grounding in it and an understanding of kind of what's going on there. I would say, as I carefully think this out, they would want to talk to someone they can trust. So if they're listening to this, there's both of us, if they trust us, but also teachers who've been doing this for a while, right? You've got to be able to trust that. And if you can get over the hurdle of reaching out to them, that's what I ended up doing myself. And I feel that's the best bet. If you hear nothing back from them, I take that as a message it wasn't meant to be with that person, with that contact I'm
Yes.
making there. Not to stop, but that's not the end of all things. Try it at least 2 or 3 times to reach out. Um, I would probably, my gut feeling is to more so go with the tutors than I would say go to a church. Now, if you're really just starting out and want to idea of what's going on, you can go to a church, be really anonymous, and see what goes on, and see if you're comfortable with that. And I'm thinking like the Ontario region is the way that you would go to a church. Around the world, you could even go to just a demonstration. Other places just have demonstrations not attached to a church. And I've went to one of those too and got a contact. I usually don't get any contacts, but I got one that time, which was kind of important. And even if you don't get one, you'll observe things. There's a lot of someone else's contact and reading that you'll be able to draw from. Like the spirit world works that way. And you'll get some answers from someone else's reading that just somehow seems to fit yours. That's a good clue there. But finding the tutors that you can trust, look how they demonstrate or how they do their thing on YouTube. Make sure it's unedited, because it's very easy to look good when you can edit out all the no's, so it looks like you've got yeses, or or edit out
Yes,
the things that didn't work out so well, because nobody's perfect. It's
true.
process. Um, that's a long-winded answer for a very simply worded question.
I do like how you said in the beginning, because not everybody knows this, go check out some books, go to your local library and see which mediums resonate with you and which stories resonate with you. And then go talk to the mentors, go meet
Yeah,
the live people.
yeah,
Yeah.
and doesn't necessarily have to be live. Like my
Yeah.
training's been predominantly largely online. That works too.
Oh, when I said that, I meant like meet them like on a Zoom and talk to them
Yeah,
face to
that
face,
works. Yeah.
right? Or on the telephone or something, like have some kind of human contact other than just watching them. So you get to know the tutors, be like, yeah, I want to study with them or
Yeah.
something.
And trust your
Yeah.
feelings, because ultimately we have our free will, it will protect us. But if your feelings are moving you in a direction, you got to go with that. That's how else would you get that little, urge to investigate or to go further with it.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much,
Thank-
Tim, for spending this time with us. I will have Tim's contact information in the show notes for you. His website is psychicmediumtim.com for those that want to reach out to you. Thank you so much for your time. And I just want to say goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
It has. Thank you.